The words still echo in my head like a death sentence. You're not worth keeping alive. My stepdad Derek spat those words at me while I sat in our living room clutching test results that confirmed my worst nightmare. Testicular cancer at 24 years old. The surgery would cost $47,000 and I needed it within 2 weeks or the cancer would spread beyond treatment. I expected family support since Derek controlled my late father's life insurance money for exactly these emergencies. Instead, he erupted in pure rage, screaming about wasted money on his worthless stepson before his fists found my ribs and his boots found my stomach. My mother, Sarah, stood frozen like a statue watching her husband beat me senseless before dragging me to the front door and hurling me onto the concrete driveway with nothing but bloody clothes and a crushing realization that I was completely alone in the world. 3 weeks earlier, I thought my biggest worry was getting enough overtime hours at the warehouse to save money for community college. The sharp pain in my abdomen had been bothering me for months, but at 24, you convince yourself these things work themselves out. When the pain became unbearable during my night shift, my supervisor, Jake, drove me straight to Mercy General Emergency Room. Dr. Martinez was a soft-spoken woman with tired eyes who delivered news that shattered my world. The ultrasound showed a malignant tumor in my left testicle, aggressive and fast-growing. She explained the cancer in clinical terms that felt surreal, like she was describing someone else's body. The immediate surgery would cost $47,000 without insurance, and my warehouse job only provided basic coverage that excluded major procedures. Do you have family who can help with medical expenses? Dr. Martinez asked gently. I nodded confidently. Derek had been managing my father's life insurance policy since Mom married him 4 years ago. Dad died in a car accident when I was 20, leaving behind a substantial policy specifically designated for my education and emergencies. Derek always reminded me how responsible he was with our family finances. Walking into our modest ranch house that evening, I found Derek sprawled on his recliner, watching ESPN, a can of Budweiser balanced on his protruding belly. His work clothes from the chemical plant were stained and wrinkled. Sarah was washing dishes in the kitchen, her graying hair pulled back in the same tired ponytail she wore every day. I need to talk to both of you, I said, settling onto the couch with the medical paperwork. Derek muted the television with visible irritation. What now, Freddie? I explained the diagnosis, carefully watching their faces for concern or sympathy. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, genuine worry creasing her features. But Derek's expression hardened into something cold and calculating. $47,000. Derek's voice rose dangerously. For some minor surgery. It's cancer, Derek. If I don't get treatment, I could die. Die? Derek laughed bitterly, crushing his beer can. You're being dramatic. Cancer treatments are all scams anyway. Doctors just want money. My stomach dropped as I realized Derek had no intention of helping. What about Dad's life insurance? That's exactly why he left it for emergencies. Derek's face flushed red. That money isn't yours to spend, boy. I've been managing these finances while you live here, rent-free, eating our food and using our electricity. But it's designated for my education and medical expenses. I protested, pulling out copies of the insurance documents I'd found in Dad's desk years earlier. Derek's reaction was explosive. He lurched from his chair, veins bulging in his thick neck. You ungrateful little leech, I've housed you and fed you for 4 years, and this is how you repay me. Demanding money that isn't yours. Derek, please, Sarah whispered from the kitchen doorway. Shut up, Sarah, Derek roared. This worthless stepson thinks he can waltz in here and drain our savings for some fake medical emergency. The truth hit me like a physical blow when I noticed Derek's defensive posture and Sarah's guilty expression. Something was wrong with the insurance money. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and accessed the bank account Derek had shown me years earlier. The balance should have been over $300,000. It was empty except for $43. "Where's the money, Derek?" My voice was barely a whisper. Derek's eyes darted between me and the laptop screen. "Medical bills. Sarah's been sick." "What medical bills, Mom? What's he talking about?" Sarah's face crumpled. "Freddie, I haven't been sick. I don't know where the money went." Derek's mask slipped completely. "None of your damn business where that money went. You're not entitled to a penny, you hear me? Not one red cent." I scrolled through months of bank statements, my heart pounding, as the pattern became clear. Regular withdrawals of $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. All cash withdrawals. All made at Cherokee Casino, 40 minutes outside town. "You've been gambling with my father's insurance money," I said, my voice hollow with disbelief. Derek's face contorted with rage and guilt. "You can't prove anything, you little parasite." "The bank statements prove everything. $300,000 gone, all at the casino." What happened next changed everything between us forever. Derek's belt was off and swinging before I could react. The leather struck my shoulders, my back, my face. I tried to protect myself, but Derek was 50 pounds heavier and fueled by desperate fury. "You worthless piece of garbage!" Derek screamed between blows. "You're not worth keeping alive? You hear me? Not worth the air you breathe?" Sarah watched from the kitchen, her face pale, but her feet rooted to the floor. She didn't move to help or call for Derek to stop. She just watched her husband beat her son with a leather belt while calling him worthless. When Derek finally stopped, I was curled on the living room floor tasting blood and struggling to breathe. Derek stood over me, chest-heaving belt still in his hand. "Get out of my house," he panted. "Get out and don't come back. Find somewhere else to die, because it sure as hell won't be under my roof." The Honda Civic I'd bought with warehouse earnings became my bedroom, bathroom, and dining room all at once. For 6 nights, I parked behind the Walmart on Route 12 trying to sleep, while cancer ate away at my insides like acid. The abdominal pain had worsened since the beating, joined by nausea that made eating impossible, and night sweats that soaked through my only clean shirt. Each morning I drove to Mercy General and sat in their charity care office filling out endless paperwork for emergency Medicaid. The social worker, Mrs. Henderson, was kind but realistic about my prospects. "The application process typically takes 6 to 8 weeks, she explained during my 4th visit. "Even with expedited processing, we're looking at 3 weeks minimum." "I don't have 3 weeks. Dr. Martinez said the cancer could spread beyond treatment if I wait much longer." Mrs. Henderson's sympathetic smile couldn't hide the harsh reality. "I understand, sweetie, but without insurance or upfront payment, our hands are tied. Have you exhausted all family options?" Family options. The phrase felt like a sick joke. Derek had destroyed my only financial safety net, and Sarah had chosen her husband over her son. I had no siblings, no grandparents, no relatives I could remember meeting, or so I thought. On my 7th day of homelessness, I parked outside the public library when it opened at 9 a.m. The reference librarian, an elderly woman named Dorothy, let me use the computers for 2 hours at a time. I was researching cancer treatment programs for indigent patients when I decided to search for my father's family. James Sullivan had never talked much about his relatives. I knew he had a brother somewhere, but Dad always changed the subject when I asked about extended family. Derek had always claimed Dad's brother wanted nothing to do with us after the funeral. Facebook search results for Sullivan in Oregon yielded hundreds of profiles. I added my father's name to the search parameters and found something that made my heart stop. A message in my Facebook inbox sent 2 years and 4 months earlier from Anthony Tony Sullivan. "Hi, Freddie. I know this might seem strange, but I'm your dad's brother, Tony. I've been trying to find you since I learned about James's accident. I called your house several times, but Derek said you wanted nothing to do with your dad's side of the family. I respect that, but if you ever change your mind, I'd love to hear from you. Your dad talked about you constantly when we were kids. I run Sullivan Construction in Portland, and you'd always have a place here if you needed one. Take care, Uncle Tony." My hands trembled as I read the message 3 times. Derek had lied about Uncle Tony wanting nothing to do with us. In fact, Tony had been actively trying to reach out, and Derek had blocked every attempt. I clicked on Tony's profile and found photos of a rugged man in his 40s wearing construction gear standing next to bulldozers and half-built houses. His company's page showed dozens of completed projects around Portland custom homes, commercial buildings renovation work. This wasn't some distant relative struggling to make ends meet. Tony Sullivan owned a successful construction business. More importantly, his eyes in every photo looked exactly like my father's. With shaking fingers, I typed a reply message. "Uncle Tony, this is Freddie. I never knew you were trying to reach me. Derek told me you didn't want contact with Dad's family. I'm in serious trouble and could really use help. Can we talk?" I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The library's computer screen seemed to glow brighter as I stared at the message, wondering if this stranger who shared my father's DNA would be my salvation or another dead end. 23 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Tony had responded immediately. "Freddie, thank God, I've been worried sick about you for years. Give me your phone number right now. We need to talk immediately." I typed my number and waited. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. "Freddie, son, is that really you?" The voice was deep and warm with a slight Oregon accent. "It's me, Uncle Tony." "Jesus Christ, boy, I've been looking for you everywhere. Derek told me you hated the Sullivan name and never wanted to see any of us again. I should have known that son of a bitch was lying." The relief in Tony's voice was overwhelming. "You tried to find me for 4 years, kid, ever since your dad died. I hired a private investigator, but Derek had you locked down tight. No social media presence, no public records, nothing. Where are you right now?" I explained everything: the cancer diagnosis, Derek's theft of the insurance money, the beating, being thrown out of the house. Tony listened without interrupting, his breathing growing heavier with each revelation. "That miserable bastard," Tony finally said. "Freddie, listen to me carefully. I'm driving down from Portland right now. It's a 5-hour trip, so I'll be there by 6 tonight. Meet me at the Denny's on Highway 91. Do you know where that is?" "Yes, but Uncle Tony, you don't have to." "The hell I don't. You're my brother's son, which makes you my family. And family doesn't let family die alone in a parking lot. We're going to fix this, Freddie, all of it." The certainty in Tony's voice was like warm sunlight after a week of cold rain. For the first time since Dr. Martinez delivered my diagnosis, I felt something that resembled hope. That evening, I sat in a corner booth at Denny's, watching every customer who walked through the door. At 6:15, a man who looked like an older, buffer version of my father approached my table. Tony Sullivan was built like a linebacker with calloused hands and shoulders that filled out his flannel shirt. But his eyes were gentle, and when he smiled, I saw my father's face, looking back at me. "Freddie," he said, simply sliding into the booth across from me. "Uncle Tony, you look just like James when he was your age. Same stubborn chin, same worried expression when life gets complicated." Tony's voice caught slightly. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner, son. I'm sorry Derek kept us apart all these years." "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." Tony reached across the table and clasped my hand in both of his. "Well, I know now. And we're going to make this right. All of it." Tony insisted on driving me to the emergency room immediately. "Cancer doesn't wait for convenient timing." He said, his truck's engine rumbling as we pulled away from Denny's. "We're getting you examined tonight, and we're getting answers about treatment options." Dr. Martinez was working the late shift and remembered me from my previous visit. She looked surprised to see me with an older man who clearly shared my genetic features. "This is my Uncle Tony," I explained. "He's here to help with my treatment." Tony's presence transformed the entire dynamic. When Dr. Martinez explained the surgery costs and timeline, Tony simply nodded and pulled out his wallet. "What do you need for a down payment to schedule the procedure?" he asked. "Sir, the full cost is $47,000. Most patients arrange payment plans or insurance pre-authorization." I didn't ask about payment plans. I asked what you need to get my nephew into surgery this week. Dr. Martinez blinked in surprise. "Well, with a significant down payment, we could schedule the procedure for Thursday morning, perhaps $15,000 up front." Tony wrote a check on the spot. "There's $20,000. Schedule it for the earliest possible time slot." As we walked back to Tony's truck, I was overwhelmed by his immediate generosity. "Uncle Tony, I can't let you pay for all this. It's too much money." Tony stopped walking and turned to face me. His expression was serious, almost angry. "Freddie, that money isn't charity. It should never have been my responsibility in the first place." "What do you mean?" "Get in the truck. We need to have a conversation about your father's will." We drove to a 24-hour diner called Murphy's, where Tony ordered coffee and pulled a manila folder from his truck's glove compartment. His hands were steady, but his jaw was clenched tight. "Freddie, what did Derek tell you about your father's life insurance policy?" "That it was $300,000 designated for my education and medical emergencies. Derek said he was managing it responsibly until I needed it." Tony's laugh was bitter and cold. "Derek has been lying to you about everything, son. Everything." He opened the manila folder and spread documents across the diner table. Bank statements, legal papers, insurance policies. My father's signature appeared on multiple pages, along with official seals and notary stamps. "This is your father's actual will filed with the county courthouse 6 months before his death. James left you everything, Freddie. The house you grew up in, the life insurance policy, his savings account, his truck, everything. The total value was over $350,000. I stared at the documents, unable to process what Tony was showing me. "But Derek said the house belonged to him and Mom. He said Dad only left the insurance money." "Derek forged legal documents to transfer everything into his name. He convinced your mother to sign papers she didn't understand, claiming it was temporary paperwork to protect the estate during probate. Then he filed fraudulent ownership transfers with the county recorder's office." Tony pointed to a specific page in the will. "Look at this clause. Your father specifically stated that if anything happened to him, you were to inherit the house and all financial assets. Derek was never supposed to control any of it." "How do you know all this?" "Because James gave me copies of everything before he died. Your father was paranoid about Derek's intentions even back then. He suspected Derek was only interested in your mother's assets." Tony's voice grew quiet. "James told me Derek had gambling problems and financial troubles. He was worried Derek might try to access your inheritance if something happened." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The house I'd grown up in, the bedroom, Derek had thrown me out of the property where my father had taught me to change oil in the garage. All of it legally belonged to me. "There's more," Tony continued grimly. "Derek hasn't had a job at the chemical plant for 6 months. He was fired for showing up drunk and stealing copper wire from the maintenance shop. He's been living entirely off your stolen inheritance while pretending to go to work every day. 6 months, but he leaves every morning in his work clothes. He goes to Cherokee Casino. The private investigator I hired has been watching him for weeks. Derek arrives at the casino by 8 a.m. and usually stays until evening. He's lost over $270,000 in the past 18 months. I felt physically sick as the scope of Derek's deception became clear. Not only had he stolen my inheritance and spent it gambling, he'd been lying about having a job while living off my father's money. Why didn't you expose him earlier?" "I tried. I called the house dozens of times after your father died, but Derek always answered. He told me you blamed the Sullivan family for James's death and wanted nothing to do with us. He said your mother supported your decision and asked me to respect your wishes." Tony's fists clenched on the table. I should have driven down anyway. I should have ignored Derek and found you myself. He's been intercepting your contact for 4 years. 4 years of stolen time. 4 years of Derek spending your money while you worked warehouse shifts and lived under his roof like a charity case. Tony's voice was thick with regret. I'm going to make this right, Freddie. We're going to get every penny back and put Derek in prison where he belongs. Tony reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. But first, we're getting you healthy. The money for your surgery isn't charity, son. It's just returning what was already yours. As we sat in that diner at 1 a.m. surrounded by evidence of Derek's betrayal, I felt a strange mixture of rage and relief. Rage at Derek's theft and deception, but relief that I finally understood the truth. More importantly, I wasn't alone anymore. Tony Sullivan was family, real family, and he was ready to fight for justice. What's our next move? I asked. Tony smiled grimly. First, you get cancer surgery and recover fully. Then we burn Derek's world to the ground. The surgery at Mercy General went better than anyone expected. Dr. Martinez removed the tumor successfully, and preliminary pathology reports showed clean margins, with no evidence of spread to lymph nodes. Tony stayed at the hospital for 3 days, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair and bringing me real food when I got tired of Jell-O and broth. The Sullivan men are tougher than cancer, he said, watching me walk laps around the oncology wing. Your father survived Vietnam and a decade in construction. You've got the same steel in your backbone. During my recovery, Tony was building our legal case. He'd hired Patricia Wong, an attorney who specialized in estate fraud and elder abuse. Patricia's office was located in a downtown high-rise, and she commanded immediate respect with her sharp suits and sharper questions. This case has strong merit, Patricia explained during our first meeting. Forged documents, identity theft, conversion of assets. Derek could face 5 to 10 years in federal prison. What's our timeline? Tony asked. These cases typically take 8 to 12 months to develop fully. We need forensic accounting, document analysis, witness depositions. Derek has covered his tracks well, but he's made critical mistakes. Tony leaned forward. What kind of mistakes? He forged your father's signature on ownership transfer documents, but he didn't match the handwriting properly. We have samples of James's actual signature from his military records and employment files. A handwriting expert can prove the forgeries easily. Patricia spread Derek's fraudulent paperwork across her conference table. More importantly, Derek filed these ownership transfers 6 weeks after your father's death. But according to the coroner's report, Derek was in Las Vegas during a construction workers' convention the week your father died. He has casino receipts and hotel bills proving he was 800 miles away when these documents were supposedly signed. I studied the papers with growing amazement. He's that sloppy. Criminals usually are. Derek got greedy and impatient. If he'd waited longer or been more careful with the signatures, this case would be much harder to prove. Tony's phone rang while Patricia was explaining our legal strategy. He stepped into the hallway to answer, returning a few minutes later with a concerned expression. That was my private investigator, Tony said quietly. Jake's been watching the house and something's happening. Derek cleared out his truck this morning and made several trips to the bank. Patricia's pen stopped moving across her legal pad. He's liquidating assets. That suggests he knows about our investigation. How could he know? I asked. Tony and Patricia exchanged worried glances. Someone tipped him off, Patricia said. Bank employees, court clerks, maybe someone in my office. These types of investigations aren't always confidential. My phone rang before anyone could respond. Sarah's name appeared on the screen the first time she'd called since Derek threw me out 2 weeks earlier. Should I answer? I asked. Patricia nodded. Put it on speaker. Hello, Mom. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, thick with tears. Freddie, baby, you need to come home right now. Why would I come home? Derek made it clear I'm not welcome. He's gone crazy, Freddie. He found out about your uncle and the lawyers, and he's been drinking all morning. He beat me up real bad this time. My face is all swollen, and I think he broke my ribs." Tony's face darkened with fury, but he gestured for me to keep talking. "Why are you calling me mom? You watched Derek beat me and throw me out. You didn't say a word to defend me." I was scared, baby. I've been scared of him for 2 years, ever since he started gambling and drinking, but I can't take it anymore. He's talking about running away to Mexico with his friend Marcus. They're planning to empty all the bank accounts tonight and drive across the border tomorrow morning. Patricia was already taking notes. Mexico meant Derek understood the legal consequences and was preparing to flee prosecution. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Come home and help me expose him. I'll tell the police everything about the stolen money and the forged papers. I'll testify against him in court, I promise. Just please don't let him get away with what he did to you and your father." Tony wrote a quick note and slid it across the table. This could be a trap. "Mom, how do I know Derek isn't making you call? How do I know this isn't some plan to get me back to the house?" Sarah's sobbing intensified. "Because he's not here, Freddie. He left an hour ago to meet Marcus at the casino. They're supposed to come back tonight to get the rest of his stuff and the money from the safety deposit box. But I found his phone recording our conversation, baby. He's been planning to hurt you if you came back." My blood turned cold. "What kind of recording?" "He set up cameras all around the house, Freddie. Little tiny ones, hidden in picture frames and electrical outlets. He was going to make it look like you attacked him when you came home. Marcus has a gun, and they were planning to claim self-defense." Patricia immediately started dialing on her office phone. "I'm calling the police right now. This has escalated beyond civil litigation." Tony grabbed my arm. "We're not going anywhere near that house until the authorities secure it." But even as Patricia spoke to police dispatch, I knew Derek's plan was falling apart. His desperation had led him to make more mistakes, and now Sarah was finally ready to tell the truth. The trap Derek had planned was about to become a trap for Derek himself. "Mom, stay on the line with me," I said. "Don't go anywhere and don't touch anything. The police are coming to help you, and we're going to end this tonight." Through the phone, I could hear Sarah's relieved crying. After 4 years of silence, she was finally ready to choose her son over her abusive husband. Derek's reign of terror was about to come crashing down, and he didn't even know it yet. Detective Rodriguez from the county sheriff's office met us at the mobile station 2 blocks from my childhood home. He was a compact man with graying temples and tired eyes that suggested he'd seen enough domestic violence cases to know how dangerous they could become. "Your mother is safe," Rodriguez assured me as we sat in his patrol car. "We have 2 deputies with her right now, and she's agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation." "What about the cameras Derek planted?" Tony asked. "We're treating this as a potential assault case, so we'll be confiscating all recording devices as evidence. Your mother showed us where most of them are hidden." Rodriguez flipped through his notepad. "Living room, kitchen, both bedrooms, even the bathroom. This guy was planning something serious." Patricia had arrived separately with a court order, allowing us to inspect the property for stolen assets. "Do we know Derek's current location?" she asked. "His truck is in the driveway and neighbors saw him return about 30 minutes ago. He's inside the house now, probably unaware that his wife already spilled everything." Rodriguez's radio crackled with updates from the deputies inside. Derek was apparently packing suitcases while drinking bourbon straight from the bottle. Marcus hadn't arrived yet, which meant Derek was alone and potentially more unpredictable. "Here's how we're going to handle this," Rodriguez explained. "I'm going to approach the front door with Freddie and announce our presence. Derek will see this as a civil matter involving family, which might keep him calm. Meanwhile, my backup officers will be positioned at the rear exit in case he tries to run." Tony gripped my shoulder. "You don't have to face him, son. Let the police handle everything." "No," I said firmly. "I need to see Derek's reaction when he realizes his plan failed. I need to look him in the eye when his world falls apart." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "Sometimes confronting your abuser is part of the healing process. But the moment things get heated, You step back and let us handle it. We walked up the driveway toward the house I'd once called home. The yellow paint was peeling worse than I remembered, and Derek's neglect showed in the dying lawn and broken porch railing. This property was legally mine, but Derek had treated it like a rental he planned to abandon. Rodriguez knocked firmly on the front door. "Police, open up Derek." Heavy footsteps approached and Derek's voice called out with artificial cheerfulness. "Just a minute, officer." The door opened to reveal Derek looking surprisingly composed for someone who'd been drinking all afternoon. His hair was combed, his shirt was clean, and his smile appeared genuinely welcoming. "Good evening, Detective. How can I help you?" "We need to discuss some financial irregularities involving your stepson's inheritance. This is Freddie Sullivan, and this is his uncle Tony." Derek's fake smile never wavered as his eyes met mine. "Freddie, son, I'm so glad you're here. I've been worried sick about you since our misunderstanding." The casual reference to our misunderstanding made my stomach churn. Derek was acting like our last encounter had been a minor disagreement instead of a violent assault followed by homelessness. "May we come inside?" Rodriguez asked. Of course, please everyone come in." Derek led us into the living room where I'd been beaten 2 weeks earlier. The furniture looked the same, but I now noticed small black devices plugged into electrical outlets that hadn't been there before. Derek's hidden cameras were still recording our conversation. "Derek, we need to discuss the status of James Sullivan's estate," Rodriguez began. "Specifically, the life insurance policy and property ownership transfers." Derek settled into his recliner with continued false calm. "Absolutely, Detective. I have all the paperwork right here." He produced a folder containing documents that looked official, but were completely different from the authentic papers Tony had shown me. According to Derek's version, my father had left everything to Sarah, with Derek designated as estate manager until I turned 30. "These appear to be legitimate," Derek said, spreading the papers across the coffee table. "James was very specific about wanting Sarah protected financially, and he trusted me to manage Freddie's inheritance responsibly." Tony examined the documents with barely controlled rage. "These signatures are forged, Derek. I have copies of the original will." Derek's composure cracked slightly. "That's a serious accusation, Tony. I hope you have proof to back up that claim." "We do," Patricia said, entering the conversation. "Handwriting analysis, timeline, discrepancies, witness testimony. Everything you filed with the county is fraudulent." For a brief moment, Derek's mask slipped completely. His eyes flashed with the same violent rage I'd seen during our last confrontation. But then he smiled again and shrugged casually. "Well, if there are legal questions about the paperwork, I'm sure we can sort everything out in court. I've always tried to do right by Freddie and honor his father's wishes." The performance was masterful. Derek was portraying himself as a concerned stepfather who might have made innocent mistakes in managing complex estate documents. He showed no signs of guilt, anger, or defensiveness that would suggest criminal intent. Rodriguez seemed puzzled by Derek's cooperative attitude. "Sir, we also need to discuss allegations of physical assault and domestic violence." "Assault?" Derek looked genuinely shocked. "Detective, I would never hurt Freddie. He's like a son to me." "Your wife claims you beat both her and Freddie before forcing him to leave the house." Derek's expression grew sad and concerned. "Sarah has been struggling with alcohol and prescription pain medications lately. Sometimes she imagines things that didn't happen, or she exaggerates normal family disagreements. I'm worried about her mental state." I stared at Derek in amazement. He was systematically undermining Sarah's credibility while presenting himself as a caring husband dealing with a troubled wife. Even his posture conveyed sincerity and concern. "That's not true," I said. "You beat me with your belt and told me I wasn't worth keeping alive." Derek turned to me with what appeared to be genuine hurt in his eyes. "Freddie, why would you say something like that? I love you like my own son. Yes, we had an argument about medical expenses, but I never laid a hand on you." Rodriguez looked increasingly uncomfortable with the conflicting stories. Without obvious evidence of violence or clear admissions of guilt, Derek appeared to be just another stepfather caught in a messy family dispute. That's when Derek made his fatal mistake. "Detective, I think you should know that Freddie has been making threats against me and Sarah. I actually have recordings of him saying he was going to make us pay for not giving him money." Tony and I exchanged glances. Derek had just admitted to secretly recording conversations, confirming the hidden cameras throughout the house. "What kind of recordings?" Rodriguez asked carefully. Derek gestured toward the electrical outlets where his cameras were hidden. "I installed a home security system a few weeks ago because I was worried about Freddie's threats. The cameras captured some very disturbing conversations." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I see. And where are these recordings stored?" "On my computer upstairs. I can show you right now if you'd like." Derek was so focused on framing me for threatening behavior that he didn't realize he was confessing to illegal surveillance. The cameras he'd installed to trap me were about to become evidence against him. "Yes," Rodriguez said. "I'd very much like to see those recordings." As Derek led us toward the staircase, I noticed Tony texting someone on his phone. Derek's cooperation was about to reveal the full scope of his deception, and he was too arrogant to realize he was walking into his own trap. Derek's computer setup in the upstairs bedroom resembled a surveillance command center. 3 monitors displayed live feeds from cameras throughout the house, and external hard drives were stacked beside the desk, like electronic evidence of his obsession with control. "Here are the recordings," Derek said confidently, clicking through video files. "You can see Freddie making threats and demanding money." Rodriguez watched Derek navigate the surveillance system with professional interest. "This is quite an extensive setup. How long have you been recording inside the house?" "Just a few weeks after Freddie started acting hostile about the inheritance money." Derek opened a video file labeled "Living Room Confrontation" and pressed play. The footage showed our argument from 2 weeks earlier, but Derek had edited it carefully. The video began with me raising my voice about the missing insurance money, but cut away before Derek's violent response. "See?" Derek said triumphantly. "Freddie is clearly agitated and making financial demands. I had to protect myself and Sarah from his aggressive behavior." Rodriguez studied the timestamp on the video. "This footage appears to have been edited. Where's the rest of the conversation?" Derek's confidence faltered slightly. "I just saved the relevant portions. The full recording is probably somewhere else in the files." Tony stepped closer to the computer screen. "Derek, if you're going to show evidence, let's see everything. Play the complete, unedited footage." "I'm not sure where the complete files are stored," Derek said, his voice rising defensively. "The system automatically saves clips when it detects raised voices." Rodriguez was no longer buying Derek's performance. "Sir, tampering with evidence in a criminal investigation is a federal offense. I need to see all footage from that evening unedited." Derek's hands trembled as he clicked through folders, clearly stalling for time. The edited videos revealed his guilt more clearly than any confession. Someone who genuinely feared for his safety wouldn't need to edit surveillance footage to support his claims. "Found it," Derek said, finally opening a file labeled "Complete Recording." The unedited footage was devastating for Derek's case. The video clearly showed me calmly explaining my cancer diagnosis and requesting access to my father's insurance money. Derek's violent reaction was captured in full detail: the screaming, the accusations, the belt beating, and finally, his threat that I wasn't worth keeping alive. Rodriguez's expression hardened as he watched Derek assault me, while Sarah stood frozen in the background. "Sir, you're under arrest for domestic violence assault with a weapon and fraud." Derek's composure finally shattered completely. "You can't arrest me. This is my house. That money was mine to manage." "Actually," Patricia said, producing legal documents, "this house belongs to Freddie according to his father's valid will. You've been living in stolen property for 4 years." Rodriguez began reading Derek's rights while pulling out handcuffs. Derek backed away from the computer desk, his face flushed with rage and desperation. "You don't understand," Derek protested. Sarah needed medical care, the money went for legitimate expenses. "What medical care?" Rodriguez asked. "Your wife told us she hasn't been sick." Derek's lies were collapsing faster than he could invent new ones. He looked around the bedroom desperately as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. That's when Tony's phone rang. "It's Jake, my private investigator," Tony said, answering the call on speaker. Jake's voice filled the room with urgent news. "Tony, you need to know that Derek and his buddy Marcus are under federal surveillance. The FBI has been watching their gambling ring for 8 months. Derek's face went white as Jake continued. "They're not just stealing inheritance money. The casino operation they're involved with is laundering drug money from Mexican cartels. Derek and Marcus are small players, but they're connected to a massive money laundering investigation." Rodriguez immediately radioed for federal backup. Derek's case had just escalated from local fraud to international organized crime. "There's more," Jake said. "Marcus was arrested 20 minutes ago trying to cross the border with $200,000 in cash. When the FBI questioned him, he started talking about Derek's operation immediately." Derek slumped against the bedroom wall as the scope of his legal troubles became clear. State charges for assault and fraud were serious enough, but federal money laundering charges carried decades in prison. Derek Rodriguez said calmly, "You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you use it." But Derek was beyond rational thought. 4 years of lies, theft, and violence were crashing down simultaneously, and his desperation made him reckless. "You want the truth?" Derek screamed. "Fine, that worthless kid doesn't deserve his father's money anyway. James was planning to change his will before the accident. He told me Freddie was a disappointment and didn't deserve the inheritance." Tony stepped forward menacingly. "That's a lie, Derek." "Is it? Ask Sarah. She knows James was reconsidering everything before he died." Rodriguez held up his hand to prevent escalation. "Derek, anything you say can be used against you in court." "I don't care anymore," Derek said, his voice breaking. 4 years of managing other people's money, 4 years of working while that ungrateful kid lived off my generosity. I earned every penny I spent. Derek's confession was being recorded by the same surveillance system he'd installed to frame me. His own cameras were capturing his admission of theft and his complete lack of remorse for stealing my father's legacy. As Rodriguez placed Derek in handcuffs, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Agent Martinez from the FBI. "Freddie, this is Agent Martinez. We need you and your uncle to come to our field office immediately. Derek's arrest has opened up a much larger investigation, and we need your testimony about the stolen inheritance money." Derek looked at me with pure hatred as Rodriguez led him towards the bedroom door. "You think you've won something, boy? Wait until you find out what really happened to your father." The words sent a chill down my spine. Derek's tone suggested he knew something about Dad's death that nobody else suspected. Tony grabbed Derek's shirt before Rodriguez could stop him. "What did you just say about James?" Derek smiled coldly despite his handcuffs. "Ask Marcus. Ask him about brake lines and insurance payouts and convenient timing." Agent Martinez's voice came through my phone speaker. "Don't let Derek say anything else. We'll handle all questioning at the federal building." But Derek's final words were already echoing in my mind. Brake lines, insurance payouts, convenient timing. The implications were horrifying, but they also meant Derek's crimes were far worse than anyone had imagined. As we left the house that legally belonged to me, I realized our fight for justice was just beginning. Derek hadn't just stolen my inheritance. If his hints were true, he might have murdered my father to access it more quickly. The federal building in downtown was buzzing with activity when Tony and I arrived for questioning. Agent Martinez led us through security checkpoints into a conference room where Marcus was already talking to federal prosecutors about Derek's criminal organization. Marcus looked nothing like the tough gambling buddy Derek had described. He was a thin, nervous man in his 30s who chain-smoked cigarettes and avoided eye contact. 4 hours of FBI interrogation had broken his loyalty to Derek completely. Marcus has been very helpful, Agent Martinez explained. He's provided details about the money laundering operation and Derek's involvement with the casino's illegal activities. What about Derek's comment regarding my father's death? I asked. Agent Martinez exchanged glances with the federal prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa Chen. Marcus has made some very serious allegations about Derek's timeline and motivations. We need to hear your perspective on your father's accident. I explained what I knew Dad had died in a single car crash on Highway 18 when his brakes failed going down a steep hill. The police investigation concluded that mechanical failure caused the accident, and Derek had been helpful with funeral arrangements and estate management. Marcus claims Derek bragged about causing your father's accident, Agent Martinez said quietly. According to his statement, Derek tampered with the brake lines to accelerate his access to the inheritance money. The room went silent as the full scope of Derek's crimes became clear. Theft fraud, assault money laundering, and now potentially murder. Tony's face was rigid with fury. Derek killed my brother for insurance money? We're investigating that possibility. Marcus says Derek showed him photos of the brake line damage and explained how he created a delayed failure that would look like mechanical problems. Lisa Chen leaned forward. There's more. Marcus recorded several conversations with Derek over the past 6 months. Derek was paranoid about getting caught and wanted insurance in case Marcus tried to blackmail him. Agent Martinez produced a digital recorder and pressed play. Derek's voice filled the conference room, slurred with alcohol, but clearly audible. You think I'm stupid, Marcus? I planned James's accident for 18 months before I did it. Researched brake fluid leaks, studied accident reports, even practiced on junkyard cars. Made it look perfect. Just another tragic highway fatality. Tony's hands clenched into fists as Derek's voice continued. The timing was perfect too. James was getting suspicious about my gambling debts, asking too many questions about why I needed to borrow money. Another few months, and he might have changed his will or kicked me out entirely. The recording captured Derek's complete lack of remorse for murdering his stepson's father. He described the planning process like a business strategy, calculating insurance payouts against the risk of discovery. James never suspected anything, Derek's voice continued. Even at the funeral, he probably thought I was just being a supportive stepfather. Poor Freddie crying over his daddy's casket, not knowing I was the one who put him there. I felt physically sick listening to Derek mock my grief at Dad's funeral. He'd stood beside me during the burial service, offering comfort and support while knowing he was responsible for my father's death. This recording is from 3 weeks ago, Agent Martinez explained. Marcus was wearing a wire because he was worried Derek might try to eliminate him as a witness. Lisa Chen opened a thick file folder. Based on this evidence, we're charging Derek with first-degree murder, conspiracy, money, laundering, fraud, and domestic violence. He's looking at life in prison without possibility of parole. The justice was overwhelming. Derek would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, never again able to hurt innocent people or steal from families dealing with tragedy. What about the inheritance money Derek stole? Tony asked. Asset forfeiture laws allow us to recover stolen funds from criminal enterprises. Derek's house vehicles, bank accounts, even his casino winnings are subject to seizure. Most of the money can be returned to Freddie. Agent Martinez smiled for the first time during our meeting. Derek kept detailed financial records because he was paranoid about tax evasion. Those same records prove exactly how much he stole and where every dollar went. 6 months later, Derek was sentenced to life in prison plus 40 years for murder and racketeering. Marcus received 15 years in exchange for his cooperation and testimony. The federal government recovered over $230,000 in stolen inheritance money, plus the house and property that legally belonged to me. But the real transformation happened with Sarah. My mother entered intensive therapy, to address the trauma of living with an abusive husband who'd murdered her first husband. She testified courageously at Derek's trial, providing crucial details about his behavior and timeline around Dad's death. "I knew something was wrong with Derek," Sarah told the court during her testimony. "He was too eager to handle James's estate too quick, to console Freddie too convenient with all the paperwork. I was scared to question him because he'd already shown me what happened to people who crossed him." Sarah and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. She moved into a small apartment across town and found work at a veterinary clinic where her gentle nature helped frightened animals recover from trauma. Our weekly dinners started awkwardly, but gradually became comfortable as we both healed from Derek's psychological damage. Tony became the father figure I'd lost when Dad died. He taught me construction skills during summer weekends and included me in Sullivan Construction business decisions. The work was physically demanding but emotionally satisfying. Building things instead of watching them get destroyed. "Your father would be proud of the man you've become," Tony said one evening as we finished framing a custom home for a young family. "You survived cancer, exposed a murderer, and rebuilt your life from nothing. That takes the kind of strength James always had." With my recovered inheritance, I started the James Sullivan Foundation, which provides emergency medical funding for young adults whose families abandon them during health crises. The foundation helps cover treatment costs, temporary housing, and legal fees for people facing situations similar to what I experienced. Our first recipient was Ashley, a 19-year-old girl whose parents threw her out when she was diagnosed with leukemia. Her stepmother had stolen her college fund for plastic surgery, leaving Ashley homeless and unable to afford chemotherapy. "You saved my life," Ashley told me when she completed her cancer treatment successfully. Not just financially, but by showing me that people can survive family betrayal and build something better. The foundation now helps over 60 families per year. We work with hospitals, social workers, and attorneys to identify young adults who need emergency support during medical crises. Each person we help represents a victory against the kind of cruelty Derek represented. Standing at my father's grave on the 3rd anniversary of Derek's conviction, I felt a peace that had taken years to achieve. Justice had been served completely. Derek would die in federal prison, never again able to harm anyone. The money he stole was being used to help people in crisis, instead of funding gambling addictions and criminal enterprises. More importantly, I'd learned the difference between biological family and chosen family. Derek and Sarah were connected to me by marriage and blood, but they chose to abandon me when I needed them most. Tony chose to drive 5 hours to help a nephew he'd never met. The doctors and nurses at Mercy General chose to provide excellent care even when payment was uncertain. Patricia Wong chose to fight for justice even when the case was complicated and difficult. Real family consists of people who choose to stand with you during your darkest moments, not people who share your DNA or live in your house. My cancer has been in remission for 3 years now. Dr. Martinez says the prognosis is excellent with less than a 5% chance of recurrence. The physical scars from Derek's belt have faded, but the emotional scars remind me daily that survival isn't just about living through trauma. It's about choosing to build something meaningful from the experience. Derek thought he could steal my father's legacy and destroy my future. Instead, his cruelty taught me the difference between revenge and justice, between bitterness and strength. Every person the foundation helps represents another victory against the kind of evil Derek represented. Sometimes justice takes time, but it finds its way to the people who deserve it. And sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up revealing their own weakness and guilt through their cruelty. True strength isn't the ability to hurt others when you're angry. True strength is the ability to survive betrayal, seek justice through legal means, and use your experience to protect other people from similar cruelty. Derek wanted to prove I wasn't worth keeping alive. Instead, I proved that some lives are worth fighting for, worth rebuilding, and worth using to make the world a little bit better for people who face the same darkness I survived. Have you ever had to choose between seeking revenge or pursuing justice when someone you trusted betrayed you? How did you find the strength to rebuild your life after devastating betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who's facing their own family crisis. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding justice. Share this story with anyone who needs to hear that survival is possible, even when the people closest to you become your greatest enemies. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting others who face similar struggles. Remember that you're stronger than whatever challenges you're facing right now, and there are always people willing to help if you have the courage to reach out. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next story.